of all of the jobs that you had, because one that you haven't talked about yet, or there's a couple. There's Lion Nathan, and then you did a massive job at Publicis was the owner of Saatchi and Saatchi. I mean, you made some major changes there and did
Yeah,
very well.
I mean, in 1989, I came to New Zealand. Doug Myers and at Lion Breweries, and Mike Smith had merged the company with Mace, which was Chris Mace, Peter Cooper, Jeff Ricketts, Robin Congrave, and they'd put together these two companies: a brewer, a soft drink company, and a retailer, because they had Woolworths and Decca and can makers, and they brought the two companies together, and they wanted someone with international experience to help run the business. So they came to me. I was running Pepsi Cola Canada at the time, and said, come to New Zealand, and they flew us down for a week to look around. My sister Trisha already lived here, loved the place. I loved the rugby and all that. And Doug and the Lion boys were very smart. They made sure I met a bunch of All Black heroes from my youth, most of whom worked in the pub business with Lion, and some very smart people like Earl Curtin and Chris Laidlaw in particular. And I loved everything about New Zealand. I mean, everything about New Zealand. I loved the lifestyle, the edginess, the business. And so I spent 8 years here. Doug Myers is one of the great heroes of American business. He had a guy on the board called Alan Gibbs, who's the most innovative, free-thinking, the guy who developed the Aqua car and stuff, and has the great farm. And he was on our board, and we became great friends. And what I loved mostly about Lion was we could sponsor every sports team we wanted. So Lion Red sponsored the Kiwis, Steinlager. We stood by the All Blacks, and we were involved in most of the provincial teams, with Canterbury Draft, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So my weekends were full of great rugby. I was still playing rugby when I came down. I was 39 years old and playing in the over 35s in Canada. I was pretty fit. And then I went to Eden Park, which was a dream for me, to watch New Zealand play. And the curtain raiser was a game between King's College and another top school. And I saw these 18-year-old centers of generally island origin tackling. I came up from a public school and tackled round the legs. That didn't seem to be the thing here. And I watched these 18-year-olds hurtle at each other and retired on the spot, promptly retired. But I loved the beer business. I loved New Zealanders. And then Doug had the vision to go out and conquer the world. So we met Alan Bond. Everybody needs to meet, as Kerry Packer said, an Alan Bond once in their life. And we were able, through some very smart financing from Mike Smith and his team, to buy the Castlemaine Forex Brewery, the Swan Brewery in the West End Brewery in South Australia, and Tui's. And with that came sponsorship of the Australian cricket team with Forex, the Australian rugby union teams, the New South Wales, Queensland State of Origin teams. So I moved across to Sydney for a year or so. One stage, I shared a home with David Campisi. Well, he shared my home for a year, and Nick Farr-Jones and all that generation of terrific 1991 players. I mean, that's what you had, Campo and JK playing against each other, and great days of rugby. So we got very involved. And when the game went pro, Moffo, then of course we were heavily involved as Steinlager, sponsor of the All Blacks, Forex, sponsor of the Wallabies. And we had relationships with the players. And I guess both you and I were very fortunate to be in, what year is that, 95, 96?
95. Yeah, 95, the end of 95. Yeah.
We were right there on the inside of the Murdoch deals, the Sky deals, all the various Sanzar stuff. And we had the greatest asset of all, which was the greatest rugby nation, the greatest rugby culture, the greatest players, and the greatest history and the greatest future, the All Blacks and New Zealand rugby, in our toolkit.
Yeah.
So we were able to, I don't know, they were unprecedented days of fun and enthusiasm. And I think we did a pretty good job in the Southern Hemisphere. I think the
Yeah.
Northern Hemisphere were slower on the uptake.
One of the highlights, and I'm sure you remember this very well, you just mentioned to me that Inga the winger has sadly passed away, I think aged about 53. But there's another guy that you got to know and I got to know very well. And we took him to San Francisco to meet Robin Williams. I'm
And one
sure
of
you.
the other guy up and dangled him over the roof
Yeah.
of 34 floors up. Do you remember that, Moffo?
Yeah, I do. Yeah,
Who
and he
was
was sitting on
holding
his.
who? And Robin was dressed in an all black jersey because
Yeah,
Robin was a mad keen fanatic supporter of the All Blacks.
yeah,
And it was his, he told me it right there, the greatest moment in my life. I've met Inga the winger.
yeah. Or Jonah.
Jonah, sorry.
Yeah, Jonah. Jonah. That's
I'm
okay, mate.
still thinking with Inga the winger.
Yeah, no, I know,
Terrible.
and it's hit you very hard. But
I only heard the news a few hours ago, so I'm not in the best.
but let's face it, mate, you're doing really well, mate. I mean, but I've got a picture which I've actually sent around the internet a bit of Robin Williams sitting on Jonah's shoulders, and the sad thing is they're both no longer here.
Yeah,
And
and now you add Inga to that list, so it's not
yeah,
a great day, really.
no, it's not really. So, uh, and well, back in those days we had a lot of fun, and as you said, we actually did a lot. The board backed our idea for a international sevens tournament because we didn't have a international sevens competition in New
But we
Zealand.
were both lucky. Rob Fisher, took over
Yeah,
as the chair of the game, and the union had been reformed, right, from 29 or whatever it was to
yeah,
8. We had an independence, as I was, and Rob was very forward thinking and very progressive because on the Northern Hemisphere, the equivalents were very slow to change and very slow to the future. So I think, when good teams come together, you got to have everybody playing in position. So I think Rob was pretty much an unsung hero, and at least I felt that way, that he
yeah.
really led the board through very challenging times in a very proactive way.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. It made my job an awful lot easier
Yeah.
to achieve a lot of the things that I felt we could achieve. And yeah, I look back at those times with a great deal of fondness, actually.
And then somehow you went to Wales. What on earth were you doing? You, Graham, Steve. I mean, what is the attraction? I've been there. Why?
Well, because I have hanging up two blazers. The Blazer Brigade. One is a New Zealand rugby blazer, and the other is a Welsh blazer. And in the history of rugby, New
Yeah.
Zealand and Wales have been immense in terms of where they stood in the rugby world. Wales, not so much, but we got there. Basically, I put in place the New Zealand model. Went from
Yeah.
12 professional teams down to 4. Won the first Grand Slam 12 months later for 27 years. And rescheduled the debt and did all the things that we did and that was a challenge in Wales. The issue that Wales has that it's always at war with itself. They've got this view that they have got a mortgage on parochialism. Well, they obviously haven't come here and seen what it's like when Auckland play Canterbury. But it gets in the way, and it's got in the way since we put that in place because they haven't embraced the regional structure, and and there's what's happened is they haven't had people there to sort of sit back and say, well, it was okay then, but what about now? Is it still fit for purpose? Well, one's got to say no, not really. So what are they doing about reviewing it?
Well, they've certainly invested in New Zealand coaches, that's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of our coaches have gone over there and improved the game, I think, and have showed some pretty strong leadership and strong growth.
Yeah, no, they have, and so I'm very proud of the fact that I was the and I have to say, in both of those occasions, you played no small part because I used you as a reference. I know that was very difficult for you because you weren't working with very much when you were trying to provide me with a reference. But I was very proud of the fact that I actually was the CEO of both of those rugby nations, and that may never happen again.
I think it's a tremendous thing. I think it's very amusing, I must say. Very amusing. And it probably served you right? You probably, after New Zealand, there you go to Wales.
Yeah. Well, perhaps even in my dotage, I might just give Daniel Levy a ring and see if he wants some help with Tottenham.
Well, he definitely needs it. Whether he wants it or not, I don't know.